Ethan had never imagined that a routine assignment could turn into something so dangerous. The research station had seemed quiet from a distance, a small cluster of metal buildings clinging to the edge of a frozen alien plateau. The wind howled constantly, cutting through layers of thermal clothing, and the snow crunched like broken glass under his boots. He had arrived here to monitor energy signatures detected in nearby caverns, but so far, nothing in the data had hinted at what awaited him. The cavern system was unlike anything he had seen. The entrance gaped like a jagged wound in the icy cliffs, and inside, the walls shimmered with crystalline deposits that reflected his flashlight beam in millions of tiny sparks. Ethan had been walking for hours, carefully mapping each tunnel, noting temperature fluctuations and the unusual radiation readings. Then suddenly, a shadow flickered ahead, fast and silent. He froze. The sensors in his pack beeped, a spike in thermal energy, low but unmistakable. Whoever or whatever was there was alive. Ethan swallowed and stepped cautiously forward. The beam of his flashlight caught on something pale and angular. A figure crouched behind a crystal outcropping, and for a moment Ethan thought he imagined it. Then the figure shifted, and a pair of eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "Hello," Ethan called softly, raising a gloved hand. "I'm not going to hurt you." The figure stiffened, a strange tension in the shoulders. It was a woman, or at least humanoid. Her skin had a subtle shimmer, almost like ice but warmer in tone, and the way she moved suggested power and agility beyond human norms. She made no sound, just stared, her eyes wide and alert. I'm Ethan," he said, stepping closer. "I'm just here to study the energy readings. I can help you if you're trapped." She flinched as he moved a few more steps forward, a soft hiss escaping her lips. Then in a voice both musical and sharp she said, "Don't touch me." Ethan froze. He wasn't even close enough to touch her. "I won't," he said quickly. "I swear." The woman Lyra, he would later learn, hesitated, then darted deeper into the cavern, moving with unnatural speed. Ethan had no choice but to follow, careful not to corner her. The tunnels twisted unpredictably, crystal walls narrowing to tight passages, then opening into massive chambers. Every step echoed, bouncing in strange ways, and the radiation readings from her body flickered like a dying star. "Wait," Ethan called, his voice trembling slightly. "I can help. You're not in danger from me." Lyra stopped suddenly, her back against a crystalline wall, chest heaving. Her eyes glimmered with something, fear, maybe anger, maybe both. The energy signature from her body spiked, a subtle warmth rising in the air around her. Ethan noticed it only because the temperature gauges in his suit had jumped slightly. "Too late," she whispered, almost to herself. "Too late." Before he could respond, the cavern shifted violently. Rocks cracked overhead and a section of the tunnel collapsed, blocking their way back. Dust filled the air, stinging Ethan's eyes. He caught sight of Lyra struggling to maintain her balance on the slick crystal floor. Without thinking, he lunged to grab her arm just as a chunk of stone threatened to pin her. Then it happened. Her skin flared. Ethan felt a sudden wave of heat wash over him even through his thermal suit. The air around her shimmered, almost like a mirage above a desert. Ice crystals melted instantly, dripping down the walls and hissing when they hit the heated floor. Ethan yelped and instinctively stepped back, shielding himself with his arms, but he couldn't break contact entirely. The energy radiating from her was raw, unrefined, and terrifyingly powerful. "I said, don't touch me," she shouted, her voice stronger, echoing through the cavern as heat radiated from her body in waves. Ethan realized then that he was lucky to still be standing. The thermal readings on his suit spiked dangerously, warning him of imminent overheating. He stumbled, almost losing his balance on the now slick floor, and quickly retreated a few feet. Sorry," he managed, voice strained. "I was only trying to save you. I didn't know." Her glowing eyes locked on him, and for a moment Ethan saw something else. Confusion and perhaps a hint of curiosity. Her chest heaved, and the intense heat gradually subsided to a more manageable level, though the cavern still radiated warmth in patches where her energy had burned through. "You're different," she whispered, almost to herself, lowering her arms. "Humans, they always touch. They always take. You almost destroyed me, yet you saved me." Ethan shook his head, trying to catch his breath. "I'm not like that. I don't take from anyone. I only help." For the first time, Lyra seemed to relax slightly, though her body still hummed with energy, faint but noticeable. "Help maybe," she said cautiously, "but contact you can't. No one touches me without consequence." The tension between them was palpable, and Ethan knew that survival would require more than bravery. He needed strategy, understanding, and perhaps a kind of patience he had never known he possessed. They moved cautiously through the cavern, Ethan following her lead, careful not to approach too closely. The further they went, the stranger the environment became. Crystalline formations sprouted from the floor like frozen trees, pulsing faintly with energy, and in some places the ice itself seemed alive, reacting to Lyra's presence. Her steps left subtle heat trails, melting the frost beneath her feet, and Ethan had to navigate carefully to avoid slipping or stepping into dangerous zones. "I don't belong here," Lyra said finally, her voice quieter now. "This place, they want to control me. They want my energy. They think I am a tool, not a being. I cannot let them." Ethan nodded, though he didn't fully understand. "We'll get out. I'll figure something out. You don't have to do this alone." Her glowing eyes met his, sharp and wary. "Alone is safest. But maybe not entirely alone. You are brave, human, or foolish." They rounded a sharp corner, entering a cavern so large it resembled a cathedral. Stalactites hung like chandeliers, dripping water onto frozen pools below. The temperature readings here spiked suddenly. Ethan realized it wasn't just her energy. It was interacting with something in the cavern, something unknown. Suddenly, a loud rumble shook the ground. Rocks began to shift and fall from the ceiling. Lyra froze, and instinctively Ethan stepped forward, but he knew he couldn't touch her again. Instead, he shouted instructions, pointing to safe paths, guiding her through the collapse. She moved with precision, using the terrain to her advantage, but the stress made her energy pulse dangerously. Warmth radiated in visible waves, distorting the air around her, melting ice in jagged patterns. Ethan dodged falling shards of crystal and yelled over the noise, "To the left! Quick!" Lyra followed his direction, but a piece of debris pinned her shoulder. Ethan grabbed a nearby chunk of crystal and levered it off, careful to avoid direct contact. The heat from her body flared again, and he had to step back sharply. The cavern echoed with the sound of ice cracking, energy pulsing through the walls, and the distant groan of shifting rock. Finally, they reached a safer area, a natural chamber that seemed to absorb some of the heat. Ethan leaned against the wall, panting, and glanced at Lyra. Her chest heaved, and faint steam rose from her skin. "You are strange," she said softly, her tone almost reflective. "You did not touch me, yet you risked yourself for me. Humans are not all the same." Ethan wiped sweat and condensation from his brow. "And aliens are not all the same either. I never thought I'd meet someone who could radiate heat like this. It's amazing but dangerous." Lyra allowed a faint smile, but it was tinged with sadness. "Dangerous, yes, to me, to others. This is why I hide. I cannot control it fully. Every touch, every sudden movement, it burns, destroys. It has always been this way, always." Ethan felt a mixture of awe and fear. Here was a being of immense power, yet she was fragile in ways he understood, vulnerable to misunderstanding, to exploitation, to fear. He wanted to help her, not just survive alongside her, but he knew it would take patience, care, and ingenuity. "Then we'll be careful," he said finally, his voice firm. "No touching, no sudden moves. We'll get through this together." Lyra studied him for a long moment, as if weighing the truth of his words against her past experiences. Finally, she nodded slightly. "Together, maybe. But do not mistake my caution for trust. I do not trust easily." Ethan chuckled softly despite the danger around them. "Fair enough. Then we start with survival. Trust, we'll see." The two moved deeper into the cavern, cautiously, silently, each step a test of skill and restraint. Ethan took mental notes, recording energy spikes, temperature changes, and Lyra's reactions. Every glance at her reminded him that this encounter was unlike any other in human history. A living source of energy, capable of destruction, yet capable of cooperation. As night fell outside the frozen cliffs, the cavern seemed to glow faintly with Lyra's residual energy. Ethan felt a strange sense of hope mixed with fear. This was not just a mission, it was a first contact of the most personal kind. And though he didn't fully understand the extent of her power yet, he knew one thing: he would do whatever it took to keep her alive and himself. For the first time, he realized that survival wasn't just about the body. It was about understanding, empathy, and the courage to face the unknown. And in that frozen cavern, with the heat radiating from Lyra's skin and the shadows dancing across the crystal walls, Ethan understood that his life, and hers, had just changed forever. The cavern stretched farther than Ethan had expected, twisting into passages that glowed faintly from Lyra's residual heat. Each step seemed to awaken new patterns in the crystalline walls, like veins of light pulsing through stone. Ethan kept a careful distance, mindful of the energy still radiating from her skin. Though she had regained some control, the faint warmth in the air was a constant reminder that one wrong move could trigger another dangerous surge. Lyra moved with silent precision, each step calculated. She glanced back at him every so often, her glowing eyes assessing, measuring whether he remained careful. Ethan tried not to meet her gaze too often. He didn't want to startle her, and he certainly didn't want to make her nervous enough to trigger another heat pulse. "This way," she said quietly, turning down a narrower tunnel. The walls here were jagged, sharp crystals jutting at odd angles. Ethan ducked under one low arch, brushing his gloved hand against the icy wall. The chill sent a shiver through him, reminding him just how fragile his thermal suit really was in these conditions. "You're not afraid?" she asked suddenly, her voice softer, almost curious. Most humans would have fled after the first incident. Ethan paused, considering. "I'm not afraid of trying to help. I'm careful, yes, but I'm not afraid. And you're not just dangerous, you're extraordinary. I want to understand that." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Extraordinary or cursed, sometimes it is hard to tell the difference. They moved in silence for a while, navigating the twisting tunnels, until a soft rumble echoed through the chamber ahead. Ethan stiffened. The thermal spikes in his suit suggested that something, or someone, was nearby. "Stay behind me," Lyra whispered, and Ethan did. From the shadows, two large creatures emerged. They were unlike anything Ethan had seen before. Reptilian bodies covered in thick scales that shimmered faintly under the crystal's light. Their eyes glowed like molten metal, and their claws scraped against the stone floor. Lyra tensed. The air around her began to shimmer. Ethan could feel the faint heat again, rising subtly, and he realized that her body reacted to the danger instinctively. "They sense you," Lyra said, almost to herself. "They are drawn to energy, they are hunters." "We must be careful," Ethan nodded. He knew he couldn't fight them directly. He was human, not a predator adapted to this alien world. Instead, he studied the cavern, looking for anything that could help. Crystals hung from the ceiling like stalactites, fragile and sharp. Patches of frozen water glimmered on the floor. Lyra moved first, stepping lightly, careful not to disturb the creatures. Her heat pulses flickered subtly, and Ethan realized she was trying to control the energy, keeping it below dangerous levels while still using it to intimidate the predators. The creatures hissed, shifting uneasily, as though unsure whether to attack. Ethan took a calculated step forward, grabbing a shard of crystal. He tapped it against another, producing a small chime. The sound echoed, bouncing off the walls in multiple directions. One creature flinched and Lyra's eyes glimmered. "Good thinking," she murmured. They react to sound as well as energy. Humans have their own cleverness. Together, they navigated the creature's territory. Ethan kept the sounds occasional, enough to confuse and distract, while Lyra's controlled energy acted as a deterrent, making the predators hesitant to advance. The strategy worked for several minutes, until one of the creatures lunged, faster than either of them expected. Ethan barely dodged, sliding across the icy floor. Lyra reacted instantly, her body flaring for a fraction of a second. The heat wave scorched the ice, creating a protective barrier between them and the predator. Ethan could feel the warmth even through his suit, a reminder of how volatile her power remained. "Careful," he shouted, dodging another strike. "You can't overdo it." Lyra's eyes met his. "I know, but sometimes instinct takes over. I cannot always control it when danger is immediate." Ethan realized that surviving this journey would require more than strategy. It required trust. He needed to understand her reactions, anticipate them, and work with them instead of against them. After several tense minutes, they reached a large chamber with a shallow pool of glowing liquid. The creatures did not follow, wary of the strange terrain. Ethan knelt at the edge, testing the heat levels. The pool was warm, almost tepid, yet safe enough to allow them to rest. Lyra lowered herself to the ground, her skin still faintly radiant, and Ethan felt the heat washing over the space, soft and contained. He took a careful breath, glancing at her. "Why are they after you?" he asked. Her gaze drifted to the pool as though it reminded her of something. "The station, the humans there, some of them, they do not see me as a being. They see me as a source of energy, a tool. If they capture me, they will experiment. They will harness this without regard for what I am." Ethan's stomach tightened. "They don't deserve to get that chance. We'll make sure you escape first." Lyra studied him carefully. "You risk your life for me. Others would have fled. Others would have tried to take me instead. You are different." Ethan shrugged lightly, trying to mask the nervousness he felt. "I have a choice. I choose to help. It's simple." For a long moment the two sat quietly, the faint heat from Lyra's skin warming the icy chamber. Ethan noticed the subtle way her energy reacted to his presence. It wasn't overwhelming, not dangerous, but present. He had to remind himself constantly not to step too close, not to make a sudden movement. Even a small gesture could trigger a surge. They rested briefly, then continued through the labyrinth. Ethan took careful notes, documenting Lyra's energy spikes, her reactions, and the unique properties of the cavern crystals. He was beginning to see patterns, how her energy fluctuated with emotion, how it interacted with the environment, and how it could be weaponized if necessary. Hours passed. The deeper they went, the more Ethan realized how isolated this world was. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the cavern, the strange interplay of energy and crystal created a fragile sanctuary. He understood that if they stayed too long, exhaustion would set in, and even Lyra's careful control might falter. Suddenly, a sharp vibration ran through the floor. Ethan's sensors beeped furiously. Lyra stiffened, her glowing eyes scanning the chamber. "They're close," she said. "More of them or something worse." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had noticed movement before, but this was different. The energy signature suggested more than creatures, something mechanical, organized, and dangerous. "Humans," he guessed. "The station. Are they sending a team?" Lyra nodded grimly. "Yes. They are relentless when it comes to capturing me. I have evaded them before, but now they will not stop." Ethan felt a surge of determination. "Then we have to move fast. We can't wait for them to corner us." Together, they navigated the tunnels with renewed urgency. Ethan guided her through paths that minimized exposure, using the environment to shield her energy from detection. Lyra's pulses became more controlled, subtle, though every so often, fear caused a flicker of intense heat. Ethan noticed the way she almost staggered, energy flaring like a warning. "Stay calm," he said softly. "Control it. Breathe." Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly, but she followed his advice, focusing on the rhythm of her breathing. Slowly, the heat pulse subsided to a manageable glow. Ethan smiled faintly. "See, you can do it, you just need a little help." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Ethan saw something like trust. "You are patient. Humans are not always patient." He chuckled softly. "Patience matters when survival matters, and you are worth the effort." They continued through the cavern, reaching an area where the ceiling opened to the sky. A faint glow from the frozen landscape outside hinted at the relentless storm. Ethan realized that Lyra's energy was starting to affect the environment. Pools of ice near the cavern entrance were melting slowly, creating steam and small streams. He had to be careful. One misstep could turn the cavern into a hazard for both of them. Suddenly, movement caught his eye, figures moving cautiously across the ice outside. Human figures, armed, scanning the cavern entrance. Ethan's heart raced. The station's team had found them. Lyra tensed, heat radiating subtly. Ethan knew she could incinerate anything in her path, but he also knew that uncontrolled energy could destroy them both. "We have to distract them," Ethan whispered. He scanned the cavern and noticed a patch of unstable crystal. With careful precision, he tapped it with a shard, sending a small cascade of sparkling fragments down. The noise echoed, drawing the human team's attention. Lyra followed his lead, moving silently along the side of the cavern, her energy controlled, yet present enough to create an intimidating aura. The humans hesitated, unsure of how to approach. Ethan realized their fear. It wasn't just the cavern or the terrain, it was the faint, unpredictable heat radiating from Lyra. "Almost there," Ethan whispered. "Just a little farther." They slipped past the human patrol, moving toward a narrower tunnel that led to a hidden section of the cavern. Ethan's mind raced. He had to ensure Lyra's safety, but also his own. Each step required careful calculation. Finally, they reached a small chamber with a natural ice bridge spanning a deep chasm. Ethan paused, noting the fragile structure. "We'll cross here," he said, pointing. "It's the safest route forward, but you need to control your energy fully. Any spike could collapse the bridge." Lyra nodded, focusing on her breathing. Her faint glow became steady, almost serene. Ethan held his breath as she stepped onto the ice. The surface creaked slightly but held. He followed, moving cautiously, every step measured. Once across, they found temporary safety in a sheltered nook. Ethan exhaled, finally allowing himself a moment of relief. Lyra sat across from him, her energy now a gentle warmth rather than a hazard. "You are human," she said softly, almost in wonder. "You do not fear what others would fear. You understand in ways few do." Ethan smiled, exhausted but resolute. "I don't understand everything yet, but I will, and I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." Lyra's eyes softened. "Perhaps that is enough for now. But the journey is not over. The station will not give up. They will come, and we must be ready." Ethan nodded. He knew she was right. This was only the beginning of their struggle, surviving the station, navigating the alien landscape, and learning to trust one another. As the cavern glowed faintly from her residual warmth, Ethan felt a strange sense of hope. Humanity's courage, ingenuity, and compassion might just be the key to survival in this alien world. And with Lyra by his side, he was determined to see it through. They settled in for the briefest of rests, knowing that dawn, or whatever passed for day on this frozen planet, would bring new challenges. But for now, they had survived together, and that was a victory. The cavern was quiet for the moment, but Ethan knew it would not stay that way for long. The station's team was relentless, and they would not stop until they had captured Lyra. He glanced at her, seated against a crystalline wall, her skin faintly radiating warmth but now controlled. She looked exhausted, yet her glowing eyes held determination. Ethan realized that this was the culmination of their journey, escaping the station while keeping her safe and learning to trust each other completely. "We can't stay here," Ethan said quietly. "They'll find us eventually. We need a plan to get out permanently." Lyra nodded, her gaze shifting to the narrow tunnels that led deeper into the cavern system. "There is a path," she said. "It is dangerous, but it may be the only way. Few know of it. Even the station's forces may not find it." Ethan followed her lead, keeping a careful distance. Every step was measured. The crystal floor was uneven, and patches of ice threatened to make the passage treacherous. He noticed her subtle control of energy. She wasn't radiating heat randomly anymore, but using it in precise bursts to clear obstacles or illuminate the path. Her power was becoming a tool rather than a threat, and Ethan was beginning to understand how remarkable she truly was. As they navigated the tunnels, Ethan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. One mistake could trigger an uncontrolled surge of heat, and not just him, but Lyra herself could be in danger. He realized that surviving this world wasn't only about courage. It was about understanding, strategy, and careful observation. Suddenly, a vibration ran through the cavern floor. Ethan froze. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter, and he felt the faint warmth intensify in the air. It wasn't one of the alien predators from before. This was different, calculated, organized, human. "They're close," Lyra whispered. "They've tracked us. They know the tunnels we took." Ethan's mind raced. "We can't outrun them forever. We'll have to face them at some point. We need a strategy that doesn't involve direct combat." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Then we must use the environment. My energy can be weaponized, but only with control. Too much and we destroy ourselves." Ethan nodded, understanding the risk. He looked around at the crystalline structures, the icy floors, the natural formations that could be manipulated. "Then let's prepare a trap," he said. "We'll guide them here, use your energy in a controlled way, and we'll force them to retreat without touching you." They moved quickly, positioning themselves near a large chamber with narrow exits. Ethan studied the terrain, noting areas where Lyra could use her heat to trigger falling crystals, melting ice to create barriers, or disorient the approaching humans. Lyra followed his guidance, her focus absolute. She allowed only subtle heat pulses, just enough to trigger environmental effects without endangering them. Minutes later, the humans arrived, armed, disciplined, and confident. They advanced cautiously, aware of the faint heat radiating from the chamber. Ethan held his breath, ready to signal Lyra. At his nod, she released a controlled surge. The air shimmered and the ice floor near the entrance cracked, sending a small cascade of shards downward. The humans stumbled, wary of the unexpected hazard. Ethan guided Lyra with hand signals, directing her energy to deflect them further without escalating the danger. The humans regrouped, advancing again, but Ethan had anticipated this. He led Lyra to a position near a cluster of large crystalline formations. With careful precision, he instructed her to focus her energy on the structures. Her skin glowed faintly as waves of heat pulsed outward, causing the crystals to vibrate and hum. Suddenly, they shattered in a controlled collapse, creating a barrier of jagged shards between the humans and them. The humans hesitated, assessing the risk. Ethan whispered, "Now, a final push. Controlled, precise. Let's make them retreat." Lyra exhaled, steadying herself. She released another pulse, this time directing it into the floor beneath the humans. Small cracks formed, expanding slowly, and steam hissed from the fissures. The humans realized the danger and retreated cautiously, unwilling to risk getting too close. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. Their plan had worked. Once the humans were gone, Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. "You did it," he said softly. "You controlled it perfectly." Lyra's gaze softened. "I had guidance, I trusted you. That made the difference." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, not from her energy but from the bond that had formed between them. "We make a good team," he said. Lyra's faint smile was her only acknowledgement. She was still cautious, still wary, but he could see that trust was beginning to form. They moved quickly, navigating the deeper tunnels. The environment grew stranger. The crystals here emitted a faint hum, and the walls pulsed with energy. Ethan realized that Lyra's presence was amplifying these effects. He marveled at the subtle way her energy interacted with the alien world around her. It was beautiful, powerful, and dangerous all at once. Hours passed, and they finally reached a natural exit, a hidden crevasse that opened to the frozen surface far from the station. The wind howled, but it was better than being trapped underground. Ethan surveyed the horizon, noting the distant mountains and the path that would take them out of the patrol zones. "We're not safe yet," Lyra said, her tone serious. "We still have the storm, the terrain, and other predators, but this is the first step toward freedom." Ethan nodded. "We'll get through it together." They began the ascent, moving carefully over the jagged ice and snow. Lyra's energy was now subdued, radiating only a gentle warmth. Ethan could feel it, a faint presence that reminded him of her power but no longer threatened him. He kept a respectful distance, allowing her to lead while he supported her when necessary. Suddenly, the wind picked up violently. Snow whipped around them in blinding sheets. Ethan struggled to keep his footing, but Lyra's controlled pulses of heat melted ice just enough to create stable paths. Her precision was remarkable, and Ethan realized how much control she had gained since the cavern incident. "You're incredible," he shouted over the wind. "I've never seen anything like this." Lyra's eyes glimmered faintly. "I've learned to survive, but not without help." Ethan felt a swell of pride. He understood now that her power was both a gift and a burden. It could protect, destroy, illuminate, or burn. And guiding her, learning from her, and working with her was not just a challenge, it was a privilege. Hours later, they reached a plateau overlooking the frozen expanse. Ethan could see the faint lights of the station far in the distance, but the patrols seemed unaware of their location. For the first time, they were truly alone, free from immediate danger. Lyra paused, looking over the horizon. Her skin radiated a faint glow, soft and calming. Ethan approached carefully, mindful of her warnings but close enough to share the moment. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not running, for understanding, for guiding me." Ethan smiled. "I couldn't do otherwise. You're too important, not just for your power but for who you are." For a long moment they simply stood there, watching the alien landscape stretch endlessly. The wind howled, the snow danced in the fading light, and the faint warmth from Lyra's skin mingled with the icy air. It was a strange, fragile balance, danger and beauty, fear and trust. Finally, Ethan spoke. "What now? We can't stay here forever." Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting determination. "We move. We find a place where I can rest, where the station cannot reach me. But now we have a chance, and I will control my power fully, for us." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. She was offering not just her trust, but her full cooperation, her life intertwined with his guidance. It was a bond forged in danger, strengthened by survival, and made real by the connection between human ingenuity and alien power. They began the trek across the frozen landscape, careful, patient, every step calculated. Ethan kept an eye on the distant station, ensuring they stayed undetected, while Lyra's controlled warmth created subtle paths through the ice, guiding them over crevasses and treacherous terrain. Hours passed, and the sun, or whatever passed for the sun here, rose faintly over the horizon. Ethan realized that survival was no longer just about avoiding danger. It was about partnership, understanding, and learning to trust instincts that were not entirely his own. Finally, they reached a hidden valley, shielded by towering ice cliffs. It was remote, untouched by humans, and stable enough for Lyra to rest and recover fully. Ethan helped her settle near a natural spring, its waters faintly warm and safe. "You're safe here," he said. "At least for now. You can recover, regain control, and plan your next move. Lyra's skin glowed faintly, radiating warmth into the surrounding snow. She looked at Ethan, her eyes softening in a way she had never done before. "You have saved me. Not just from the station, but from losing myself," Ethan smiled. "And you've taught me that strength isn't just physical, it's patience, trust, and understanding. We make a good team." She allowed herself a small, rare smile. Yes, a team. As the wind howled outside, Ethan and Lyra sat in quiet companionship, their bond forged through fire, ice, and peril. The world was still dangerous, the station still a threat, but they had survived together. And in that survival, they found something rare: respect, trust, and the quiet promise of a future where human courage and alien power could coexist. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of hope, fragile but real, and he knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Her skin radiated warmth, not as a threat, but as a symbol of resilience, trust, and the incredible bond between a human and an alien unlike any other. And as they looked toward the horizon, the frozen landscape stretching endlessly before them, Ethan understood the truth of this strange, alien world. Sometimes survival was about courage, sometimes it was about control, and sometimes it was about learning to trust someone else's power as much as your own. Together, they would face whatever came next.